Hello everyone! Welcome back again to our Lee County Library Science Club. As always, I just want to remind you that you should be performing these experiments and demonstrations with your parents' permission and some supervision. Science is a pretty big thing, alright? There are lots of different branches that people can study, and one of my absolute favorite is biology. Now biology means the study of animals, right? Unfortunately, with all of us stuck at home for a while, it's kind of hard to go out there and study the animals, isn't it? So, we are going to show you some ways to demonstrate the characteristics of different animals right here in your own home. Now today, we are going to discover what it's like to be a whale. Now you probably know that whales live in the ocean, right? But they're not actually fish. They're really mammals, like us. And one of the things that we have in common with whales is that we are what's known as warm-blooded, which means that our body temperature inside stays the same and has to stay the same for our body to function no matter what it feels like outside. Okay, so that's why when it's cold and snowy, we bundle up in our winter coats and we go outside to try to keep our warmth inside our body. Think about where those whales swim sometimes. They swim all the way up in the Arctic Ocean, where the average water temperature can be between 30 and 35 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like literally freezing cold, right? And water can conduct heat away from our body at about 25 times faster than air. Now a whale's average body temperature is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you have a 100-degree body but 30-degree water, and that water is constantly trying to take the heat away from the whale. So marine mammals like whales and seals and walruses, they would freeze really quickly if they didn't have some form of protection. And that protection that we're talking about is a unique layer of fat that sits just under their skin and covers their entire body. And that is known as blubber. Blubber has 3 important characteristics that helps it serve the whale, okay? It stores energy for when maybe they're having trouble finding food. It can provide some energy for their body, okay? It provides buoyancy, which means the blubber is one of the key things that helps whales float. And lastly, it also is a great insulator against the cold, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Now it's important to note that blubber is pretty different from the fat that we have or other land mammals like a cow. Alright, and that's different in 2 important ways. The first is the concentration of lipid tissues. Now lipids are a form of fat that is structured in a way that when it forms layers that trap air in between them. And as we talked about earlier, air, especially still air when it's not moving, does not conduct heat very easily. So if you have those layers of fat with little pockets of air between them, it's really hard for heat to move through those layers. Okay? And so lipids have what's called a low thermal conductivity, which just means the heat doesn't pass through it very easily. The other key difference between our fat and blubber is that blubber has a high vascularity. Vascularity just means that it has lots of blood vessels in it, whereas our fat doesn't really have any blood vessels at all. Right? Like if you've ever eaten a steak, the fat is kind of white, whereas the meat is very red. And the difference there is that the meat has lots of blood vessels in it, but the fat doesn't really have any, so it's just white. However, blubber has a lot more blood vessels through it, so it would actually look more like the meat of that steak. Okay? And the blood vessels are important to this insulating factor because the blood vessels, when it's warm, they can expand and more blood can flow through the blubber and flow to the skin so that they can release more heat from their body. But when they get to those really cold Arctic waters, those blood vessels can shrink up and constrict, and so that only a tiny bit of blood is getting through that blubber to release the heat into the cold water. So again, those two important characteristics of blubber. It has a high lipid concentration, which means it has low thermoconductivity, and then it also has high vascularity, which means the blood vessels help them regulate how much heat gets out. Now, our experiment today, we are going to kind of show how blubber works and how it protects those whales. We can actually feel the difference between blubber and non-blubber. Alright, cool. So the materials we're going to need today is a large bowl of water, okay, some cooking shortening. Now, I have here animal lard, but you could use a vegetable shortening as well, like Crisco. Alright, we're going to need 2 Ziploc bags, and we're going to need some duct tape, and the last thing we're going to need is some ice. Our first step is going to be to pour the ice into our water. You want to get it in there early so that it has a chance to get really nice and cold. Now we're going to put that off to the side and let it cool down. The next thing we're going to do is take about 5 or 6 scoops of our vegetable shortening. Okay, and we're going to put it into our bag. Get some really nice big spoonfuls because we're going to want enough in here to be able to fully cover the inside of that bag. Now I know this can be a little messy, so make sure you have some help doing this, okay? See there, we've got a good amount of shortening inside our bag. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is kind of spread it around a little bit so that it covers the inside of the bag pretty evenly. Alright, now we're going to put our hand inside our other bag. We're going to put it in here, and we want to kind of squish it into that shortening. Alright? Once we've got it in there, we're going to want to move the shortening around the bag a little bit to try to get it so that the bag is nice and covered. Whew, that looks really funny, doesn't it? Now, see how my hand is mostly covered, pretty evenly covered? Alright, we want to make sure we're all the way around so that we are really protected by our layer of blubber. Now the next thing we're going to do, oh, see, mine's trying to escape there. You're going to take that inside bag and you're going to fold it down over. You're going to fold, again, the inside bag, you want to fold it over the top of that outside bag. Alright, because we want to trap our shortening inside. Our next step, we're going to take our duct tape and we're going to seal those bags. Alright, our blubber glove. Pretty cool, right? we're going to do a nice little experiment. I want you to take your bowl of, woo, that is cold water. All right, now I'm going to take my uncovered, vulnerable hand and I'm going to stick it right in that ice water, woo, for just a few seconds. Oh man, that is really, really cold, isn't it? Woo. Now, I'm going to put my hand into my Blubber glove. And I'm going to take it and stick it back in that ice water. And look at that. As long as I've got it a pretty good layer all the way around, I can't even really feel the ice water. Alright? Now I know, see it's a little thin right here? Right here I can feel the cold. But really, all the way around the rest of it, I'm not feeling very much cold at all. And that is the way blubber works for whales. Now it's important to realize that what we've created here is not actually blubber, alright? Because it's still animal fat from land animals, it doesn't have that same lipid construction that blubber does. But this is a much more concentrated and thick layer of fat than we would experience normally within our bodies. And so it's a pretty good representation of what blubber does for whales. So blubber, as we talked about, is a very cool way that whales have adapted to their very cold environment. There are lots and lots of other ways that different animals have adapted to their environments, which we'll talk about in future episodes. Thank you so much for coming. Have a wonderful week. We'll hope to see you next time. Bye!